We're all scared of something. No matter who you are, you're scared of something. Maybe you don't like needles, or you're squeamish around blood, or have some mild arachnophobia. Though some fears are more extreme and less casual than those, I have someone I know you're afraid of. She lives in the shadows of the night, stalks the innocent, compensating the benevolent who feed her sick desires, and laying vengeance on those who dare lay their eyes upon her. I'm of course talking about the Tooth Fairy. What, doesn't the name alone make you shiver? Of course not, it's the fucking Tooth Fairy. The only thing remotely creepy about her is her infatuation with those bony chunks that get pushed out of your mouths when you're still shitting your pants. But apparently, this isn't your typical Tooth Fairy. Oh no, this is an evil Tooth Fairy. Right. The only way the Tooth Fairy could be a threat is if instead of a tooth under your pillow, you left her this movie instead. That'd make me want to kill you. I've got some history with this movie. See, when my brother and I were little, our father rented this movie out of boredom, and I'm not sure how, but we managed to see it. I mean, I can't honestly tell you how we did, but we were there and watched it. My parents are a lot smarter than that, so I can't tell you how I remember it happening so vividly, but regardless, this movie was one of the reasons I became so terrified of the dark, and was for almost a decade. Yes, the movie about a killer fucking Tooth Fairy scared me. I'm a disappointment. Well, let's see why darkness fails. This is Darkness Falls. Our film starts with a stock flame effect over some creepy old photos as a narrator who sounds more fitting for Lord of the Rings tells us the story of Matilda Dixon, the horribly burnt woman who lived in Darkness Falls years ago but was unjustly executed.
One day, 2 children didn't come home. The townspeople blamed Matilda. They hanged her.
You tried her and hung her in one day? Without any evidence other than that she looked creepy. See, this is what real police brutality looks like, people. Anyway, she lays a curse on the town and vows to kill anyone who sets their eyes on her, even though she wears a mask. Wasn't them removing it to hang you what you were afraid of? We then truly begin our film on a young boy being put to bed by his mother. This is Kyle, and yes, he does look a little young for an apparent teenager. And come to think of it, so does his love interest, Kate, who sneaks into his bedroom late at night to tell him that some kids are going swimming in the quarry, and is it just me, or is this not what most kids are doing in their early teens? Sneaking out and midnight makeouts are a little further down the line is all I'm saying. Before leaving, Kate reminds Kyle to put his tooth under his pillow, and that this one is special, because the Tooth Fairy comes to take it personally.
Remember, when the Tooth Fairy comes, don't peek.
Leaving a tooth for the Tooth Fairy, just like the teenage troublemakers they're pretending to be. Also, she didn't get them before? Lazy bitch, this kid better be getting a solid gold bar for his last tooth, cause he's been getting a lousy $1 for years. But true to Kate's word, the Tooth Fairy comes to visit later that night, in what is admittedly a creepy scene which keeps the fairy hidden from view and really uses the swelling shadows nicely to almost surround the room in darkness. It's actually kinda creepy. But she manages to wake Josh by accident because she's a terrible fucking fairy. How best to be sneaky? Stay in the shadows? Check. Wear a mask? Check. Wail like a banshee getting drilled in a hentai? Check. I mean, I've heard of dressing in camouflage, but she seems like the type who enjoys a challenge. Maybe she should try dressing like this guy. And like anyone, unless this is The Grudge, he should have stayed hidden under the sheets. And here you have it, ladies and gentlemen, what we're supposed to be scared of for the rest of this film. Be very afraid. This is a major letdown, especially after the slender and tall design they had all ready to go. Imagine this in the movie instead of this. Instantly better. Not great, but shit, it's better than Freddy Krueger in Phantom of the Opera. Oh wait, that actually happened. So Kyle escapes and hides in the world's most well-lit bathroom, and Kyle's mother goes to see why her son is acting like a pussy. But there was a mirror and she was about to turn on a light, so the Tooth Fairy claws her face up. Doesn't take her teeth or break her jaw, just rips her open and goes to finish off Kyle. However, Kyle stays in the bathroom all night and the light protects him. The police arrive next day and Kyle is suspect number 1.
I heard he was having some problems, but Jesus Christ.
How is he having problems exactly? Other than hanging out with people who act way older than they are, he seemed pretty normal with an active social life and a room full of typical boyish things. Not even so much as a metal poster? Come on, movie, give me something. Regardless, this and the scratch on his neck is somehow enough for everyone in town to think that Kyle killed his mother, and he's hauled off to a mental hospital. Cut to just a mere 12 years later, and Caitlin is all grown up. And not only does she now have a little brother named Michael who she's apparently responsible for, but he's exhibiting a familiar fear of the dark, not even sleeping for more than 10 minutes at a time. The doctors say he's physically fine, so there's nothing wrong with him, and yet he isn't sleeping and claims there's a woman after him. Might be time to dust off those old psychology books, Doc. It is a thing. Desperate for answers, Caitlin calls up the only possible person qualified enough. The guy who disappeared on her in middle school and never came back, Kyle, who's currently in the middle of taking pills and changing lights. Also, it's still the early 2000s, so there's some new metal shoved in there. He agrees to come out and visit Michael in the hospital. Here, Michael basically says sometimes he thinks it'd just be easier to turn off all the lights and let the Tooth Fairy take him. Okay, this is touchy. I am not going to strike that nerve within 1,000 feet. Just going to put it out there that since Michael is in fine mental health, only appearing fucked up in the head because old lady Pixie Tits flies around in the dark when no one else can see her, the suicidal thoughts seem a bit over the top even at this point. All I'm saying is at his age, unless Hollywood wrote for me, I'd be more inclined to cry and become an emotional wreck, nodding off during the day than I would a suicidal doll with human features. Anyway, Caitlin laments to Kyle that her brother's been saying things about the Tooth Fairy and drawing pictures that really do her too much justice. But Kyle, not wanting everyone to think he's crazy and yet driving all the way out here to see Michael, says they're just stories and shakes off Caitlin's concerns. He's about to skip town, again after making his way all the way out here, except his childhood friend Larry, seen for 2 seconds in the opening here, hooked up with Caitlin and bumps into the pair, asking Kyle out for a drink.
Like I haven't seen you in 12 years, man. One drink's not gonna kill anybody, right?
Yeah, it won't kill him. As the two sit down to share a drink, however, the local bully who never grew up starts instigating a fight, and not one person steps in to break it up. Kyle, still not wanting people to think he's crazy, decides to just leave. Except the bully sneaks out and tackles Kyle off the back porch into the woods below, taunting and beating him up. Jesus, are we sure this guy isn't the reason kids have been disappearing? Also, I forget his name, and Wikipedia doesn't know, so I'm just calling him what he is. Kyle escapes from his attacker, the redneck, but the stereotype is soon slaughtered by the Tooth Fairy. That very night, the police are on the hunt for the missing pair. Well, wait, already? Who saw both Kyle and the drunken kill fodder leave? I'm pretty sure you have to be gone for more than an hour for a full search squad to come after you. The evidence falls right into their lap, and they're off to arrest Kyle for a crime they can't prove he committed. Oh, wait, they do try some kind of interrogation.
I don't know much about medicine, but it occurs to me that if a man is taking antipsychotics, it might be because he has a tendency to become, well, psychotic.
I'm not sure you know what a psychotic means, pal. Regardless, since they've got no real evidence, and Larry is a lawyer, Kyle is free to go right away. Kyle takes a trip to the local store to stock up on flashlights, swiping a gun because the owner left the keys sitting out, and somehow did so without Larry noticing, and then the pair set off for the hospital. Meanwhile, it seems the doctors actually did dust off those psychology books, and should have checked the publishing date since their immediate response to a psyched out kid who won't sleep and has suicidal tendencies all related to his fear of the dark should be strapped down and shoved into a submersion tank.
In a sensory deprivation chamber.
Jesus fuck, if you get the sniffles in this town, did they let leeches crawl in your chest? No, maybe they just chop off body parts till they think you're cured. Regardless, the Tooth Fairy stops Larry and Kyle, and only Kyle is able to escape, reaching the hospital and demanding they stop the procedure. Is that an MRI machine? That's your submersion tank? That's an MRI machine. That is an MRI machine. Like, no joke, you aren't doctors, are you? You killed the doctors and you're wearing their coats, because there's no way you're doctors. But the police arrest the man who only made a demanding phone call and is a bit frantic. That's enough to lock him up, I guess. And hey, while Kyle's locked up, guess what conveniently happens to the whole town? Oh, because of course. Old Dixon comes flying into the police station, killing several people who didn't even see her face or lose any teeth. God, this bitch has got some inconsistent curse rules. After killing all but one cop who now believes Kyle because, I don't know, maybe there's something to his story about a killer Tooth Fairy after it flies through your fucking station, they're off to the hospital for Michael and Caitlin. Meanwhile, Caitlin and Michael are hiding from the Tooth Fairy.
Okay, let's stay under the bed.
Well, I guess the ghost can talk now. That or Caitlin's a ventriloquist.
Let's stay under the bed.
They're chased out into the hallway and through the hospital until they run into Kyle, who's armed with flashlights and flares to fight off the fairy. Their escape into an elevator is cut short, however, and they have to evacuate. Please note that only the doctor saw the Tooth Fairy in this scene, and yet, spoiler alert, the nurses are hunted as well. Why? Why bother showing the doctor seeing Matilda's face if she's just going to cut up anything that moves and breathes?
How long do we have the emergency lights?
Another couple of minutes, maybe.
You know those lights have to last 90 minutes minimum, right? It's required by law. Even a small town hospital like this has to abide by those rules. Still though, it's more dramatic if they're on a time limit, I guess. So, as they make their way out of the hospital, one by one the ferry picks off our warm bodies, and when all of them are stuck on the stairs, the lights begin to go out and they have to jump. This goes as well as you think it would for the last nurse, and the doctor nearly bites it as well. But the group is saved in the nick of time by the police officer, who somehow saw they were in trouble and crashed the car through the front doors. Good thing they weren't in the way. They all escape, again, this time in a vehicle. They contemplate heading to the lighthouse to wait out the night.
Why don't we just keep driving? We're safe in the car.
Oh no, you made sense. Now you gotta die. So, with only our heroes and the cop left, we arrive at the lighthouse where they think they'll be safe. Oh, well shit. They need to go down into the dark to fix the light. This is where we say goodbye to our cop friend, and Kyle gets knocked on his ass, soaking his arm in kerosene. The Tooth Fairy then moves in on Caitlin and Michael. Wait, how the fuck is she floating around in that lightning? That's light! That's gotta hurt like a bastard! And it's drawn out horror lighting, so you know it's brighter than any flashlight. Yay! Consistency has officially called to inform us it's never coming back, and the consistency it left in its place was a cardboard cutout. Anyway, let's wrap this shit up. With our heroes stuck at the bottom of the lighthouse, Michael crawls through a tight space trying to reach a power switch for the lighthouse before the fire fades and the Tooth Fairy can kill them all. And of course, he manages it. But this movie's barely film length as it is, so better throw in the classic "Psych! Killer ain't dead" from every slasher movie ever. And since we abandoned tension and scares long ago, it's nice we at least get a badass way to beat the ghost.
I see you, bitch!
Damn, that's hardcore. So, the day is saved and our heroes rest under the watchful light of the tower. Later, at an unspecified location, probably in Darkness Falls, a child is being put to bed.
Tooth Fairy?
Oh great, here comes the twist ending.
It's just mommy, honey.
Oh, I guess not. Well, anyway, Darkness Falls is right. It falls flat on its face after the opening and didn't get back up. Some guy named Scott Harito from a San Francisco-based cable station said this thing was just the bee's tits and ran rings around the ring. And as somebody who didn't find the American adaptation of The Ring all that scary, I can assure you that it is still leagues ahead of this trash. Who are you anyway, Scott Harito? Well, apparently this person doesn't exist. The quote might, but the name of the man behind it was actually Scott Harriott, great job there, of the cable station Tech TV. Due to what little footage I can find, I'm not making any judgments, but I will just say that he should have stuck with looking at strange websites and pop culture icons as was his wont, because clearly his taste in films is fucking garbage. This movie was bad. It was boring and blandly shot, and everything after the opening had me either falling asleep or rolling my eyes. Its main characters try to have some depth and uniqueness, but are backed by boring or stupid side characters, mundane dialogue, and a monster so ridiculous it leaves you laughing every time she starts metal screaming and cutting people up. On top of that, the backstory for the monster elicits neither sympathy nor fear. It's confusing, and oftentimes she breaks even the most clearly defined rules. As it sits, Darkness Falls is bad, and I think it's no wonder I stopped being afraid of the dark shortly after. I grew up and realized that a monster that inconsistent couldn't possibly be real. Oh, well, that and the Tooth Fairy isn't, real, I guess. Alright, well, I promise I'll try to find something more interesting to talk about after this snore fest. Cheers, guys.